Let's talk all about AI in business. It's hosted by Brent Muller. Welcome to the Future Proof Podcast.
Hi, and welcome to the latest episode of Future Proof, the podcast where we're decoding how founders, leaders, and execs are reshaping the business landscape using AI, data, and automation. So if you're looking to future-proof your business, you're definitely in the right place. And before we jump into today's episode, here at Deploy AI, we're always happy to help point you in the right direction. If you just want to understand where AI fits in your digital strategy, we always have a link to our calendar in the show notes. Book 30 minutes, no pitch. We're here to help, and we're here to point you in the right direction. If we can help you, we will. But like I said, we're just here to help everybody start to embrace AI. But let's jump into today's episode. I'm joined by Karl Hughes, who owns a holding company that does acquisition for digital agencies. Karl, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, good to be here, Brent. Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, awesome. So, Karl, tell us a little. We always start with the leader's journey. So, talk to us about your background and leading up to starting to acquire the agencies.
Yeah, sure. So have a bit of a strange meandering path, but a lot of us who are entrepreneurs
Most
do.
founders do.
So I came out of college, studied engineering, got into working for startups after school. I was just always interested in smaller companies. So was the first software engineer at a couple startups in Chicago. At the pandemic hit, the last company I was working for was kind of hit basically a rough time for raising funding. And so I decided to go figure out something new to do. I started freelance writing. Now, there aren't many software engineers and CTOs who do freelance writing. So pretty quickly, I got a lot of inbound interest, people that were running companies that wanted to sell things to software developers and needed that sort of unique perspective that I had. And I realized within 6 months or so that this was a pretty big opportunity because there was just more business coming in than I could handle. So instead of it being just a stopgap thing, yeah, exactly, right? Like when the market sucks you in, it's like you got to like go where it takes you. So instead of just saying like, yeah, this will be a short-term thing to my next job, I was like, well, I'll just make a business out of this and see how it goes. So yeah, Draft.dev was born. That was my first business. I ran that for a couple of years, realized that I am pretty good at putting processes and systems in place, and I'm pretty disciplined. So one of the first big KPIs, kind of milestones I had within 2 years of running the company, I got to where I could take a whole month off, not respond to any emails, not get on any sales calls, and the business just ran. Like the team just did everything. We were doing over impressive. 2 million in revenue. Yeah, I mean, it was a good spot to like step back and say, oh, what do I really want to do? Like just beyond, starting up this little agency. So I got together with a longtime friend and we became business partners. And I pitched him on this idea of let's go find opportunities like Draft.dev, which does specifically content for developer tools companies that want to sell things to software developers. So niche, so specific. But because it's so specific, it makes it really relatively easy to operationalize and standardize and kind of build a process and a workflow for everything from sales to operations and production. So we said, let's put together a portfolio of these things. Let's see if we can go buy a few more of these small agencies that do very specific niche things, what we call productized services. And so we bought the podcast consultant about 3 years ago now, 2.5 years ago now, and have been running that. We've since done a couple of little add-on acquisitions as well that were kind of tucked in and merged in for buying some competitors, but still looking at possibly doing another 1 or 2 acquisitions this year, depending on how things go.
Nice. So is your target, it sounds like your target is almost extreme sub niche, right? Because you can really operationalize.
Yeah.
Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. I mean, so the advantage to I'll back up. Like the challenge that most agencies have, especially small ones, is client acquisition because they kind of do everything for everybody. And so usually what they run into is like the founder is just the driver of all business. And usually that means the founder just builds off their personal network, the industry events they go to, they're kind of like networking in the city that they're in. And I think that's fine to a point. But if you want to build a business that doesn't rely on the founder or CEO having that personal gravitas, you have to come up with a niche. You have to come up with a way to repeatedly do the same thing over and over for the same kind of client, because it helps you build trust faster with those prospects. It helps you understand where to market to those people, market to them on a cheaper, per lead basis. Like, there's tons of advantages to niching down. I can't even go into all of them, but like Anyway, so the opportunity is taking a business that's not super well narrowed down and then narrowing it into something that makes sense for it and really figuring out how to rinse and repeat those growth channels, the marketing channels.
Wow. Oh, that's really on point. So talk to us about like your outlook, right, of going after these. One, are they hard to identify?
Yeah, good question. It depends. On one hand, marketing agencies want to be found typically. And so
Yes.
the good news is, unlike something like a small local business that doesn't really do any advertising, marketing, or have much of a LinkedIn presence, like these niche marketing agencies very much have a online presence that we can use to find them. So finding them is usually not the big challenge. The big challenge is finding ones that are ready to sell and actually have enough of an asset there that's worth buying. And so, not to get too much into M&A, but essentially as a buyer, we're looking at this business as a cash flow machine to pay off any loans or debt we take to buy the business, and to make sure we
Right.
actually get paid as owners for our work, because we're going to come in there and do a lot of stuff. And so if the business has been, say, like not generating cash, like we look at a lot of small businesses, small agencies where it barely prints out a profit, it's very hard to justify buying it. On the other hand, if it's very profitable, but the owner is involved in everything from sales to production to client satisfaction, and on, it's extremely hard for us to go in there and actually take anything and repeat it. So we look for some sweet spot in the middle there where there's room for improvement, but there's actual cash flow that we can use to then reinvest into the business.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. And so, some of these were probably available, or again, a lot of the landscape has changed since COVID, right?
Yeah.
And then changed even in a different way with AI. So,
Yeah.
what are you seeing over the last couple of years, and then what's your outlook going forward?
Yeah. So the big trend that I noticed that sort of got me into this was the days of the downtown flagship agency. I'm looking at downtown Chicago where I live. I could see the Sears Tower from my house. And the days of that downtown corner agency are kind of gone. Like, it doesn't make as much sense to go to the big name, standard agency, especially if you're a small to medium sized business. You want somebody who actually understands your industry and your niche really well, so they can speak with a lot of authority and build trust with your target audience. And so what I think is going to happen, or has been happening over the last 5 years and will continue, is agencies sort of breaking down into these little niche specialties, whether it's a specialty around a certain service that they offer or around the industry they serve. Both are really important, both from the agency's customer standpoint. They want to get the most out of their agency. They want to have somebody who knows their space really well, but also from the agency operations standpoint. So making sure that agency can actually do the same thing repeatably at a profit margin that makes sense. So that was the broader trend that I've seen, and kind of will only continue, especially as we've all gone remote. There's not as much draw to going downtown to the big corner office as there used to be. And then, what happened in the last couple of years has been generative AI has just gotten a lot more capable. And what that means is a lot of those things that marketing agencies used to do with real humans, especially junior copywriters, offshore talent, A/B testing, all this kind of stuff can be done by AI at a fairly good capacity. Now, again, it's not replacing everything. We got lots of human in the loop workflows that are probably going to be that way for a long time. Like, there's pros and cons, and there's places where it makes sense, but it certainly has changed like how digital marketing gets done and how digital marketing agencies operate. And some of them have adapted, some agencies have, and some have not. And so some of the opportunity certainly is finding ones that haven't. Yeah, exactly. As you know.
Yes. Yeah. It's amazing to me. It's like, oh yeah, I'm using ChatGPT to write some emails and write some copy. I'm like,
sure,
not getting it, right? Not getting it. Because
well,
it's
a start.
So much more. It's a
I'll
start.
give some credit, right? And part of it is, so again, having worked in tech for a long time in software engineering, I see this all the time. Different people land at different spots on the adoption curve. And at the end of the day, we're still pretty early on in this cycle of this technology being really useful and able to like legitimately do human level jobs. And it still has its rough edges. And the thing is, people who are not early adopters don't love to fight around those rough edges. They kind of want either someone to, like you, to do it for them, or kind of get them trained on it and get them used to the rough edges, or they want to just wait. And honestly, I think that's what a lot of businesses default to, is just, let's wait a couple of years and see where this goes before we do anything.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was with that thought process, Karl, when it was the cloud, right? Or mobile, right? because
digital
you
ads.
really,
I mean, I remember
right,
in marketing, it's all the same kind of thing. Yep.
exactly, because I thought you had that leeway. In this is different, right? And this is the reason I started the podcast, is that I want more owners, founders to embrace AI earlier, and not for my own sake, for their sake, because I also realize what's happening. And, you have companies out there that are getting massive growth because of the efficiency of AI with a third or less of the employee count than their competitors, right? And that to me, that trend's going to continue. And it's because of the things you're talking about. If you look on the back end at where all your bottlenecks are, if you just start there, forget all the bells and whistles and chat bots, and they're all great. But when you start to think about where are your big bottlenecks in your org, or just in your business processes in general, and if you can alleviate that, your morale of your employees goes way up, because now they're not doing grunt work, and it really sheds light, or basically shines a light on what's possible with AI today. Right. Rather than thinking about, I got to protect my employees. It's not about that. To me, it's about, how do I use AI to make my employees' job better so they can do more for me, make them 3 to 5 times better, right?
Yeah.
Internally. Yeah.
It's always bothered me, that argument that I want to do things to protect my employees at the expense of the long-term survival of the business. Because if the business doesn't survive because of the economic situation that you're in, it doesn't matter that you gave employees good jobs for 6 more months. They're eventually getting fired. And it's like, I think that, again, like as a business owner, you have to take the long view of like economics. And what that means is sometimes certain roles will become redundant and they should be replaced by technology. Offshore teams, they should be completely just done away with because we don't need it anymore. Like that's going to happen. And you can't just fight that, to the end if you want to actually stay around for 20, 30 years. Like, in my case, I want to be running these things for 20, 30 years. So we have to always look at technology as an opportunity, not a risk to short-term employee happiness or engagement or monetary compensation. All those things may be true, but it's ultimately about the 20-year vision, not the 6-month vision.
Yeah, totally agreed. Totally agreed. So, as you now look ahead, right, the next 1 to 2 years, what do you see, and then where are the opportunities, especially in the stuff that you're looking at?
Yeah, I think the big fear that a lot of people have in the agency space is that, maybe this is more outsiders looking in. They'll say like, well, isn't AI just going to replace the need for an agency? Like, I mean, maybe, but like, I kind of doubt it, because right now,
Yeah, I kind of doubt that too.
there's still humans in the loop in most of these systems, right? And so, in other words, that human has to either collect input from various stakeholders, they have to guide the machine in certain directions. I often equate this, like when you're using a good AI workflow, it's kind of like a junior to maybe mid-level employee sometimes, it just depends, but like it's good at certain things, but other things, it needs guidance. It needs sort of feedback to push it in the right direction. And then once it gets it, it can kind of repeat over and over. So anyway, the question is, will agencies still be here to help push the machine in the right direction? Absolutely. Because there's always going to be some clients, some companies that when a task or a certain thing is not something that is a core competency, they will default to outsourcing it, at least to start. And that's always been the space that agencies have played in. Could agencies or could companies today replace us as an agency with other humans? Yeah, of course. That's always a risk, right? Like that doesn't change
Always
because of
been a
AI
risk,
being
right.
here. Yeah. So my thought is that future looks like, the best agencies will figure out where AI fits into these workflows, and they'll be leading the charge ideally on building the best workflows to maximize where AI fits into whatever their specialty is. So if it's ads, if you're running ads for clients, the best agencies are going to be the ones who figure out how to use AI to test better and get results faster than the ones who don't. And it's the kind of thing where if you did develop that in-house, it would take you months or years of a person learning how to interact with the AI and how to refine the prompts you use, et cetera. Whereas the agency is hopefully going to have those just on call and ready. And so that to me is what the future looks like.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. We're doing it over and over. We're working within a lot of clients in the same niche. So we kind of get to know that industry, what works, because really, like, fundamentally humans are buying from humans and trusted sources, even though, we're all getting a little bit of help here and there from these AI tools.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So where do you see the opportunity as you look at growing the portfolio, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is it to still find these sub niches that you're talking about? Is there a like a thoughtful strategy that which I'm guessing there absolutely is, about the types of ones that you go after? Because to me, right, there's also a play that you could be thinking about where they kind of build on each other, right?
Sure.
Versus,
Yeah.
siloed. So
Yeah.
are you
The
guys thinking
pros
about
and
that
cons.
or? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Pros and cons. If you let's say we bought like 5 or 6 agencies that all worked in marketing for technology companies. Well, that sounds great because they can cross sell. They could all, there could be a lot of shared sort of learning between them. The downside
Yeah.
and the trade off there is we've now got industry concentration across not just one company but many companies. So
Right.
I think we're trying to strike this balance between small agencies that are very niched into different industries, but also have some complementary ways they can work together. So what we're kind of aiming towards is basically having 3 or 4 key industries where we have exposure so that we have risk sort of mitigation, and
Yeah.
then sharing behind the scenes as many of the non-core production functions that we can. So for example, we started to build a shared marketing service that works at both the companies to market and drive inbound leads for both companies. And it works
Right.
really well. The nice thing is we built this kind of like, boilerplate sort of workflow for marketing a small agency that we can rinse and repeat for every agency we buy, and we can kind of immediately plug it in and build a 10 to 20 sales call a week deal flow. It's something that most
Right.
agencies would love to have. We've kind of got a way we've done it, and we know it works pretty well. So like that sort of thing, building that, operationalizing it at the holdco level, and then deploying it to each company as we buy them is great.
Yep.
Same with accounting and finance functions. Easy to share those behind the scenes because these companies work pretty similarly at a financial level, and it allows us to have kind of control and oversight over the finances. On the other hand, some parts of it are really hard to generalize. For example, the production processes we use between the two companies are just vastly different. And AI plays a part in both of them. We're using AI tools at both companies and integrating our workflows more and more, but in different ways because they're just fundamentally different kind of output, different kind of client. So it's important that you sort of know where you can generalize and where you can't. There was this rule we had in software engineering that you never try to generalize something until you have 3 cases of it. What that means is like you kind of don't want to build an assumption that this is how it'll go every time until you've seen it 3 times and maybe 4 or 5 just to make sure, or else you'll waste a lot of cycles trying to do that.
I think that's a great rule of thumb. Absolutely. So last question is, as you think about the future here, where does AI for the founders that are thinking along the same lines, right? About whether it's acquisition or they're thinking about where does M&A fit in? Where does a factor on the scale in the future, right? Because traditionally M&A was all about a single 1 or 2 metrics, whether it was EBITDA or it was about cash flow, right? It just depends on what you were looking at. Where do you think AI influences this whole equation the most?
Yeah. So I would say that fundamentally, as a business buyer, we care about what's called quality of earnings, which means the likelihood of their cash flow, the business's cash flow, to be here in many years. That's kind of like, I want to see a history of cash flow that is consistent and steady and predictable, and that allows me to predict a future of cash flow that's steady and predictable, right? Now, what AI can do to enable that kind of cash flow is your big question. That's kind of like the fundamental thing. So what I would say it does is it can lower the dependency on the founder when the founder has built, say, good workflows that introduce AI at key points in the process, or whether it's the client and business development processes, or you're on the back end producing the services or whatever. Like either way, AI can be a huge help, and it can make the business less founder dependent because it's instead dependent on technology, which we can kind of pass over. I can't when I buy a business, I don't really buy the founder along with it. I mean, they may hang out for 6 months to a year and help me a little, but like that's an entrepreneur. I'm not gonna get them for long. I know that. So, but I can buy the technology they put in place, and that's a lot easier for me to sort of pull in and actually just reuse and potentially use across other companies too. So I think it's a huge asset from like getting the business to be more founder unreliant or non-reliant on the founder. And then the other bit is margins. Buyers are always looking at net margins as our sort of guiding light in these kind of service businesses, at least, for how much we value the company, how much it's got potential to sort of improve, or how hot that market is. So using, these are agency numbers and they are going to vary by industry. So, apply what you want. But like say in our typical agency acquisitions we're looking at somewhere between 10 and 30% net margins. But if the founder has, say, implemented a lot of AI and they're now squeezing out 40, 45%, 50% net margins, that could be a really good sign. This is a very healthy business with a lot of cash flow to reinvest into growth. And so things like that are where I would look at how AI has affected the industry and the specific business we're looking at.
Awesome. I was thinking two areas, and you touched on certainly on one of them, and then the other one was, actually you hit on both, right? Is then driving the margins out, right? Because I think everyone's thinking about where AI can expand the margins.
And the thing there is that might be temporary. That's the one thing I'll say, because assume that we all will adopt AI across agencies in the next 10 years. It's just going to take variable amounts of time. It's like the adoption of the typewriter. The companies that jumped in and adopted the typewriter got those productivity gains earlier, but eventually it all leveled out, and we're all
it all levels out. Right.
That's now a new normal. I think that's kind of where AI, it's in this early adoption. You might get a lot of savings out of it, and it might help you improve your margins. That may not last forever, and you kind of have to be ready for that sort of dwindling as more people adopt it and it gets to be commonplace. But that's typical of any technological revolution, for sure.
Yeah, totally agree. Well, I got to tell you, Karl, this has been very, very insightful, and I really like your business model. And I think that as you perfect it, I think it'll accelerate, and I think that that's a really cool place to be.
Yeah, well, check with me in 5 years. I'll tell you, Brent. It's a fun journey, but it's got a lot.
Yeah, exactly. But it's fun, right? I mean, you get to roll up your sleeves, but it's not all consuming either. You're not in the day to day of everything. So,
right.
And that's a good spot to be. So, thank you for spending some time with us. Thank you for sharing your insights. And we look forward to kind of seeing how this goes for you.
Thanks, Brent.
All right. Well, hey guys, that wraps up this episode of Future Proof. And this is exactly the types of guests that we have on to give you guys ideas on how AI is influencing and reshaping, in this case, M&A. So thank you again, and we'll see you guys on tomorrow's episode.
If you're ready to embrace change and lead with innovation, be sure to subscribe and never miss an episode. Thanks for tuning in to the Future Proof Podcast.